I remembered one of the research projects that you looked into, which where you were listing all of these ways in which women are more sensitive. Let's use that word because it's probably best, even though probably for some people it will have some negative connotations. Let's just pause it here and say that we are not using it in this way, but it's easier for the conversation. And one of the ways in which women are more sensitive, they even respond to vaccines much more powerfully, and that was really something that stuck with me. So on a wide range of issues, women are essentially more prone to detecting threat, whether it's real or perhaps not real. And what I find really fascinating with potential implications of that is that huge part of modernity is actually weighing heavy on that protective reaction mechanism, which is unique for women. And I wonder, like, how much of the cancellation culture or silencing some dissident voices and difficult conversations, for example, could be the downstream effect of that mechanism.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, I generally don't find that women would be more likely than men to cancel, because men will cancel you out by a punch to your nose, right? And they cancel all the time, right? And they scream and they yell and they do all kinds of things. And if you're dead, you're canceled, right? And men are so much more likely than women to kill others. So to me, that's the ultimate form of cancellation, is killing. And homicide rates are like 9-1 in some countries, men to women. So, I mean, that to me is really cancel. If you want to be honest about it, that's real cancellation. So, but if you're talking about something really much, much less severe, but that could be emotionally upsetting. And, I do think it's clear women have stronger immune systems than men, so they respond to pathogens more strongly, or parasites, but also to emotional upset. And women are much more likely to have PTSD. And it is upsetting for women to be emotionally distraught. And so it causes a stronger response in women. And therefore, following up on your logic, it makes sense to me that women would want to stay away more from others who are going to say mean things or say things they would upset them. And so you might get that kind of, in that particular way, oh, please don't tell me that. I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to hear it, because I'm doing what my immune system does. I'm protecting myself emotionally. And it's very clear women have a harder time because they have stronger emotional reactions. It's a harder time to, I don't know what's the best word, but come down from those strong emotions, right? And so if you have somebody saying things, right, that really upset you, then, oh, that's going to be like harder on you than it would be on a man, right? And so therefore it's an immune response, only it's an emotional immune response. And I could very well imagine that. I haven't studied that. And I do get upset when people say that women cancel more than men, because, as I said, depends on your definition of canceling, right? And so it's very easy for men to just punch somebody out and they're canceled. But yes, in terms of being around others, I always am surprised at some men. They'll like marry a woman who has very different political views and adopt her views, right? And that's a big thing now in the United States, because it's so polarized. I'm like, you could just give up your own views and adopt her views? How could you do that? I don't care that much. But for women, that's much bigger ask, I think. And women are having a harder time with that, because it's like, oh, I feel so strongly about this. And usually when you have political views, or whatever the views are, you are coming from a family and a mini culture that shares those views. And now it's like, wait a second, I have to change. No, I don't think I can do that very easily, or it'll cause a lot of upheaval in me. And I don't want that. So in that way, I would agree with you.
It was the research from Corey Clark that made me think about it, because I think she was looking at, the researchers that were essentially looking into potentially controversial subjects. And when she was doing part of her research was basically contacting all the professors and researchers and all that, and to ask them certain questions. And from her research, she said that women were much more in favor of, for example, silencing or not publishing research that is true but could be perceived as hurtful, for example. And that sort of made me really think, like, how deep is this um, need for women to sort of to keep the waters like still, to keep everyone happy. And I think I think nowadays the cancel culture, it's so wide that it's almost perhaps not helpful when we are discussing it and sort of just labeling everything cancel culture. But part of me sort of wonders how much of what we are, for example, seeing is sort of the downstream effects of some of those mechanisms that are biologically there and clearly are still affecting us as humans, or to what degree they are actually affecting us. And I think that there was, I'm going to butcher this one, so I won't tell you exactly um, the research because it just won't come to me now. But it was something that was essentially looking done very recently, that is essentially showing that young women, are going way more towards sort of liberal, very tolerant, very lovingly, dovingly sort of um, path, whilst men are turning, for example, more conservative. And I was sort of thinking, well, are women really, really tolerant, for example, or is it more that they don't want to stir the waters? So, like, would women be staying silent, for example, when there is something in the culture that they are not happy about because of the fear of being socially excluded, or because they are naturally more agreeable? Or is it just both of these factors are different side of the same driver from the evolutionary point of view?
Right. Well, that's a lot, and I do know those papers you're referring to. I mean, I think a little bit is competition, because I think if you can get together with other people and say, this is the right way to do it, this is the ethical way, that's always a problem. That is always a problem. That's basically saying my group is right and your group is wrong. And we all think these things. But sometimes, at least for me, when I get older, I think, I was wrong, right? And I'm wrong about other things. And that's part of life. And that's part of growing up. And that's part of meeting different people. And that's part of, to me, really interesting development. So I think a little bit what's going on with this women is actually social exclusiveness of other people, right? It's not, oh, I think this is so right. I think it's, we're better than the
Oh.
other people. And I have this close bond to these other people. And we feel great. And it really makes me feel comfortable because I'm not alone, and so forth. But it's presented as we are more ethical, right? And the problem with that is there's a bunch of women who don't feel like that on the other side, who are
Mm-hmm.
conservative, who have their own points of view, and they do the same thing, right? And I totally get that. I mean, people always say, oh, well, men are more warlike than women. And absolutely, and across species, males are much more likely to go out and fight other groups. However, I am firmly convinced that it's not that men are more hating of other groups. I think women are just as hating, if not more, but they're not the ones that fight because they don't engage in contests. They engage in scramble competition. So you say to the men, you go and you fight. And there's other species where it's the same thing. The males are expected to die for the group because they're not taking care of the offspring. And that makes total sense to me. But my feeling about a lot of this stuff that's coming out, and I know the papers you referred to, is I don't think the ethics here are the key problem. I know I have my own take on this. I have no
Mm-hmm.
evidence. I haven't looked at this. This is just my own interpretation. Is it's not that one group is better than the other. It's that you have your group, and it's a form of intolerance, and it's to me very scary to not let other people think. Do I think men do this all the time? Absolutely, but they're upfront about it. They're more upfront about it. I
Mm-hmm.
hate that other group, right? And I want to get rid of them, and we're going to take over this country and make it X, Y, and Z because
Yeah.
that's better. And they say it like that, and that is cancel, and that's intolerance, and but they're not saying it's ethical, right? They're just not using that word. It's just right, or it's what they
Mm-hmm.
want. But the females are using the mantra of morality, right? Oh, we're right because we're more moral. Now, wait a second, right? There's nobody out there saying who's more moral and who isn't more moral. And if you say, oh, you can't do this to one group of people, well, you might accidentally be doing it to another group of people by virtue of what you did with the first group. And so then you get this discrimination against these people, but not those people. And it's so convoluted, and it's, to
Mm-hmm.
me, dangerous. But I'm not saying that women, I don't think women do it more than men. I mean, certainly in the paper you referred to, that is a academic study, at least the first one you referred to, of which I'm aware, where they went across a whole bunch of different fields. And women now are very involved in academia and very involved in this. And I think in the academic universe, women are probably, I believe the results, being more likely to cancel than men are. But get out of that and go to the, governments, or go into, religious organizations or whatever, where men are usually holding more power, and they're doing the same thing. They're just upfront
Mm-hmm.
and they say it.